let's talk about those New York Knickerbockers. I
Yeah.
am fascinated by what they've done with this roster over the last few years. I think a lot of people were shocked when they fired Tom Thibodeau. The
Yeah.
Mike Brown system, you've done some great videos over the course of the season talking about Mike Brown and the ups and downs of what he's trying to implement here. And I think a lot of the focus goes on to Karl Anthony Towns.
Right.
Like you made a great video at the beginning of March, I think, talking about Mike Brown's innovative system, off-ball movement, and getting open looks at the basket. How does Karl Anthony Towns play into that come playoff time? Because I think a lot of people view Cat as the X factor for the Knicks going forward.
Yeah.
Jalen Brunson's going to get his 25. Cat's got to get his 20 and 13, right? So what do you think about this Knicks system in Cat right now?
I think it started to come together a lot more over the past month. They played some really solid basketball, and you slowly start to see Cat's numbers creep back up. I was getting really concerned in December, January, when maybe I wasn't able to catch a game, but I'm looking at the box score, and I'm seeing Mikal Bridges with 19 shot attempts, OG Anunoby with 16, even Landry Shamet some nights with 15. And Cat has 6 shot attempts. Cat has 8 shot attempts. Like, that doesn't strike me very well. I don't like the way that looks. And then you start to look at some of the games. I'll always remember the one I was watching. It was them versus Portland. And Mike Brown just took Cat out of the game early. And I was checking Twitter. I was like, is he hurt? I don't think he fouled out. I do watch games, but I'll turn the commentary off and I'll just listen to music. And I'm like, man, I don't think he had 5 fouls. I don't think he had 6 fouls, but they just weren't able to get him the ball in the post. And prior to getting Jose Alvarado, you've got a bunch of lineups with no true point guard.
Right.
And sometimes we take for granted a simple post entry pass. It may not be the sexiest thing in the world, but when you're playing with a guy like Cat, if you can't make that, he's not getting the ball in optimal positions. That means now, instead of getting him a post up 12 feet away from the bucket, I'm getting it to him at the top of the key, and now you got to drive. And sometimes he'll have these like silly offensive fouls where he'll run into a guy, or he'll flop more than he's actually getting to the bucket. So it just looked up and down at times, but now they're making those passes. We've seen a few more clever sets. They're starting to run a lot of cross screens for him, UCLA screens, simple stuff to get him position and let him work. And they're also seeing a bit more 2-man game between him and Brunson, which for me was kind of a mind boggler. Like, why aren't we running this all the time?
I was about to say that should have been like a given in my opinion, but yeah, 100% agree.
Yeah, like that is easy offense, because if you drop on it, Cat can pop, and he's one of the best big man shooters of all time. Yep. And then giving Jalen Brunson ample room to be able to snake, find his spots, that doesn't look very good. You can't switch it because Cat's going to brutalize any point guard. So, yeah, I was always wondering why we didn't get a bigger dose of the 2-man game, but I think it's slowly starting to come together. However, if it doesn't, though, and we see Cat regress, we don't see him be elite, it could get nasty real quick, for the New York Knicks.
I thought the biggest thing about the way that this playoffs was set up was I never ended up making this video. Just I kind of ran out of time, but the number one NBA content that I wanted to put out was a Knicks versus Cavs series. Karl Anthony Towns versus Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen. Nightmare matchup. Statistically speaking, it is the worst matchup in Karl Anthony Towns' entire career when he plays up against the Cavs. Like, there's a lot of comparative stats to talk about there, but usage rate versus player impact estimate. Cat versus the Cavs, worst matchup of his career. So the Knicks got a great draw there by securing the 3 seed and avoiding the Cavs. They're going to have to go up against the Pistons if they win their series. So Cat played pretty well versus the Celtics last year.
Yeah, he did.
Different system. But like you said, kind of hitting his stride as the Knicks close out this season. But overall, it just seems like they've just been so up and down the entire year. I remember back, like you were saying, I think it was like back in December, they had to call like a players only meeting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they lost like 4 or 5 in a row and they just couldn't figure it out. And then like 2 weeks later, I'm seeing New York Knicks on a 7-game winning streak.
Right,
And
right.
it reminds me a lot of Mike Brown with that Sacramento Kings team. I think it was now 3 years ago when they went up
Crazy,
against I think they went up against the Warriors, right?
Yeah,
In that
in the
playoff
playoffs,
series.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think at the beginning of this year, it seemed to me that Cat was being used like Domantas Sabonis a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The same action, but Cat is not Domantas Sabonis, and Domantas Sabonis is not Cat. They are both great rebounders. Domantas Sabonis, not as good of a shot creator, much better playmaker than Cat. And then Karl Anthony Towns, like you said, one of the greatest shooters in big man NBA history.
Yeah.
It seems like they've finally gotten him to hit his stride. The most important thing for me for this Knicks team is getting him involved early, having him in a rhythm and keeping like I cannot believe that this is still a conversation. I remember having this conversation with some friends like 4 years ago, talking about Karl Anthony Towns in foul trouble. It just it's some of those clips where he's just it just is the most mind-boggling thing that I've ever seen is like, what are we doing? We're picking up our 3rd foul with 9 minutes in the second quarter.
And the funny thing to me is Cat never believes he fouled anyone. You know, it's never it's never actually his fault. You know, you'll get a few guys raise a hand in the air. Yeah, that was me. Cat is out here immediately like, nah, I didn't do it, bro. And it's like, come on, dog. Come on. You know, it's a funny watch.
Yeah, like seeing it, you know, I won't do a Cat impression, but seeing him throw his hands in the air and scream, oh my God. It's so funny. It's so freaking funny to watch. He's a very New York Knicks-esque player, right? Big personality on the biggest stage and whatnot. But, you know, we've talked about Cat. We've talked about Mike Brown. Jalen Brunson is one of the best guards in the league, hands down. Absolutely. All NBA caliber player. We saw that matchup versus the Pacers last year. I believe there were multiple games where he had 40 bombs, but the games that they lost, though, it kind of looked like he didn't shrink in the moment, right? Because shrinking in the moment means like you're not taking the shot. He was taking the shot and they just weren't falling. So what about Jalen Brunson's game allows him to succeed? And then where are the matchup weaknesses when it comes to elevating, or I'm not elevating him, but I guess the reverse. What's descending? Like how does he elevate and descend as a player with the basketball in his hands?
Yeah. With Brunson, firstly, we got to talk about being bored of greatness. He is not 6'2", whatever they list him as. He's maybe 5'11".
Yeah, I thought the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, he's 5'11". He's not crazy fast. For him to be a 25 a night type of guy at his size is historic. Like, that is really high level. We've maybe seen it from Isaiah Thomas a couple of years ago. And once you get past those smaller guys, like, there just isn't a lot of true small point guards that have been as dominant of scorers as Jalen Brunson is right now. But I think his best trait is also part of his weakness. He is a fantastic shot creator, knows how to create space, is so crafty, impeccable footwork, plays off of two, can get to spinning jumpers, step throughs, you know, up and unders, pump fakes, anything you want skill-wise, he can do it for you. But doing that in a playoff setting where you're facing the best defenders in the world who have had time to scout you, watch all of your film, know your tendencies, knows all of the sets that you're getting to, and likely all of the counters that you've ran out of it, it's tough to keep making shots when, you know, they're going to have the Atlanta Hawks when you've got Dyson Daniels guarding you, you know, a 6'5" guy who also isn't expending a ton of energy on offense. You know, he does a good job hitting the glass, rolls occasionally, but he's fully there to defend you. You know, that's his night's mission. And you move all up and down the East. All of these teams have these type of guys that are just custom made to kind of shut down a primary on ball guy. So I think that's his strength, and I also think it's his weakness. But it's really helpful to have a guy like Mike Brown because he's gotten Jalen Brunson on the move. Last year, it was a lot of Jalen bring it up. We'll either set you a screen or we'll let you isolate and you'll get right to it. This year, okay, we're going to run you out of pistol. We're going to run you out of a wide handoff. This time it's zoom action. So instead of just being able to match up one-on-one and deal with Jalen Brunson, now I have to deal with him in multiple screens. I got to watch him move. I have to make sure he's not backdoor cutting me. There's 3 or 4 things I have to think about extra that make my life as a defender much more difficult. And if there is, a massive bump to having Mike Brown, I think no one has experienced that more than Jalen Brunson in terms of being able to move, having cleaner looks, and not having to just create against the best defenders in the world on a nightly basis.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I just couldn't figure out how to either put it in words as eloquently as you just did, because that's a great description of the switch from Thibodeau to Mike Brown, right? This offense is transformational. I was trying to find some kind of I guess statistic to kind of back it up. And the only thing I could really find is like NBA play tracking stats. The Knicks last year were one of the least movement teams. I don't know how to describe that in a good way, but they were moving some of the least last year, and now they're in the top 5 of the league this year, right?
Right.
Mike Brown has not only transformed the way that this offense works in terms of the half court, but also the isolations even look different because you've got off-ball movement. Last year's team, comparatively speaking, is like the Minnesota Timberwolves now, right? You have your ball dominant guard. He comes up, he isolates. He doesn't get a shot. He passes up for a 3. He does get a shot. I mean, he's making it 50% of the time, right? But this year, like we're throwing off ball looks for OG and Mikal Bridges. We got Landry Shamet. Like this is a Knicks team that can adapt to the setting. The question is will Mike Brown press the right buttons? To me, Mike Brown, like he fluctuates to me between being a top 10 coach and an average coach, because he's got like the most buttons on any of the keyboards of the NBA. And when he presses the right one, the Knicks are playing top 3 basketball. But he sometimes just presses the wrong button, whether it's a culture thing or a play call that you just kind of you're just thinking like, what are we doing? This is not situational basketball here. So
Right.
The Knicks to me are like one of my biggest question mark teams about what can they be. They've got like the highest floor or like the highest ceiling and the lowest floor for a top 3 seed team that I've seen in quite a while.
Yes.
Very curious to see what they look like in this series versus the Hawks. And this is actually the first team that we're talking about with a designated playoff series. Real quick before we transition back to the West, what are we thinking in this Hawks series? Can I get a games prediction? Like Knicks in 5, maybe Hawks in 7. I'm throwing a curveball at you right now. I want to see how the brain works.
I'm gonna go Knicks in 6. I think
6.
Atlanta has the offense to be able to steal a couple of games, get Towns, Brunson in foul trouble, and see where you go from there. Nikhil can get hot. CJ, we know CJ can get hot. Kuminga has played decent with this team in the full court. So I think they could steal 2 games, but I don't see them winning the series.
I'm in the same boat as you. I think if the Hawks team continues to transform in the way that I'm seeing them kind of move towards with Jalen Johnson, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and maybe Kuminga being a part of this future, this Hawks team in the future is going to be really dangerous. But we're seeing the early versions of them right now.
Exactly.
They don't have the playoff experience to go out and try to get into a gritty series. I do think they can create transition better than almost anybody else in the league. and that could win them a game or two. So comfortably speaking, if I see the right Mike Brown in this series, I'll go Knicks in 5, but I also think, realistically speaking, Knicks in 6. Thanks so much for watching our playoff previews. Be sure to go check out the other ones as well. And huge shout out to Colin Hatfield. This guy is one of the best ball knowers on social media. You can find him on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at Colin.Hatfield Show. This is one of the best ball knowers in and outside the game. Be sure to go check him out. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.